You've started over again. New Monday, new plan, new promise to yourself that this time will be different. By Thursday, it's gone. You tell yourself you're lazy. You tell yourself you lack willpower. But the real answer is far stranger than that. And it has almost nothing to do with laziness at all. Your brain was never built for what you're asking it to do. Think about it. You want to sit still for 8 hours. You want to resist food that's sitting 3 feet away. You want to repeat the same small action every single day with no immediate reward. None of that existed for most of human history. Your ancestors didn't need consistency in the way you're demanding it of yourself. They needed something else entirely. They needed responsiveness. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham, who has spent decades studying early human behavior, has shown that for nearly all of human history, daily life was reactive, not routine. You didn't wake up and follow a fixed schedule. You woke up and read the environment. Was there food nearby? Was the weather safe? Was a predator close? Every decision was made fresh, moment to moment, based on what was actually happening around you. This is the part that changes everything. Your brain didn't evolve to sustain a fixed pattern of behavior over weeks and months for a reward that doesn't arrive until later. It evolved to detect change and respond to it immediately. That's a completely different skill. And when you try to force long-term consistency onto a brain built for short-term responsiveness, something breaks. Not because you're weak, because you're using the wrong tool for the job, and nobody ever told you that. Here's where it gets stranger. Psychologist Roy Baumeister ran a series of experiments in the 1990s that reshaped how scientists understood willpower. He found that self-control functions less like a personality trait and more like a muscle. Use it heavily in one task, and you have less available for the next. He called this ego depletion. Resist a plate of cookies in the morning, and by evening, your capacity to resist a different temptation is measurably lower. This idea has been debated and refined since, but the core insight holds up. Willpower is not infinite. It's not even close to infinite. It's a limited resource that drains with every decision you make. So when you wonder why you can stick to a habit for 4 days and then completely fall apart on the 5th, this is part of your answer. You're not failing morally. You're running out of a finite resource that your ancestors never had to spend the way you do. Because here's what they didn't have. They didn't have to decide what to eat from 30,000 options. They didn't have to resist a phone buzzing in their pocket every 4 minutes. They didn't have to choose between 6 competing versions of who they should become today. Their environment made most decisions for them. Food was whatever was available. Movement was whatever the day required. Rest happened when the sun went down, not when a screen decided to let them sleep. You, on the other hand, are making hundreds of tiny willpower withdrawals before you even sit down to work on your one important goal. By the time you get there, the tank is already empty, and you call that laziness. It isn't laziness, it's depletion. But there's a deeper layer here, and it involves something researchers call the novelty bias. Your brain releases dopamine not just from reward itself, but from the anticipation of something new. Neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz demonstrated this in his research on dopamine neurons, showing that these cells fire most strongly in response to unexpected novel stimuli, not repeated, predictable ones. The first time you start a new habit, your brain lights up. It's new, it's exciting, it feels like progress. By day 6, that same habit produces almost no dopamine at all. Nothing has changed about the habit. What's changed is your brain's chemical response to it. The task is now old news, and your brain, wired over millions of years to chase novelty because novelty once meant new food sources, new territory, new information critical to survival, simply stops rewarding you for showing up. This is why the 5th day of a new habit feels so much harder than the first. It's not that the habit got harder, it's that your brain stopped paying you for it. So what did your ancestors actually rely on instead of raw willpower? Environment. Nearly everything. Anthropologists studying small-scale societies have consistently found that behavior was shaped far more by physical and social environment than by internal discipline. If everyone in your group ate the same way, you ate that way too. If the terrain required walking 6 miles a day to gather food, you walked 6 miles a day, not because you decided to, but because there was no alternative available. Consistency wasn't a personal achievement. It was a structural inevitability, built into the world around them, not summoned from some deep internal reserve of grit. Compare that to your life right now. Every single healthy choice you try to make requires you to actively override an environment engineered to pull you in the opposite direction. Your ancestors' environment supported the behavior they needed. Yours resists it at every turn. This reframes the entire question, doesn't it? You've been asking, why can't I stay consistent? But that question assumes consistency should come from inside you, through sheer force of will. The better question, the one your ancestors would have understood instantly, is this. Why does your environment make consistency so difficult in the first place? Psychologist Wendy Wood, who has researched habit formation for over 3 decades, found something remarkable in her work. Roughly 40% of daily behavior is not the product of conscious decision at all. It's automatic, triggered by cues in the environment rather than by willpower or intention. This means the people who seem effortlessly consistent aren't secretly more disciplined than you. They've simply built environments where the desired behavior is the path of least resistance, not the path requiring constant internal battle. This is the twist that changes how you should think about every habit you've ever tried to build. You weren't broken for failing to stay consistent through willpower alone. You were trying to do something your ancestors never had to do, using a brain that was never designed to sustain effortful repetition without environmental support, and blaming yourself for a design limitation instead of a strategy failure. Now bring this back to today, back to your actual life. The gym clothes you leave by the door aren't a gimmick. They are you rebuilding the kind of environmental cue your ancestors relied on without thinking. The junk food you don't buy at the store isn't willpower. It's you removing a decision point entirely, the same way your ancestors never had to resist food that simply wasn't there. The friend you tell about your goal isn't just accountability. It's you recreating the social structure that once made certain behaviors the default, not the exception. None of this is about trying harder. It's about needing less willpower in the first place, because willpower was never meant to carry the entire weight alone. Every time you've quit a habit and called yourself weak, you were actually just missing information. You were fighting a battle with a finite resource against an environment built to drain it, using a brain wired to reward novelty over repetition, and expecting yourself to win through force alone. Your ancestors never won that fight through force. They won it because their world didn't ask them to fight it in the first place. So the next time you sit down to plan a new habit, don't ask how you'll find the willpower. Ask what you can change around you so the willpower barely needs to show up at all. That single shift in thinking is closer to how humans actually functioned for hundreds of thousands of years than any productivity system will ever be. You've started over again so many times, and each time you called it a personal failure. But the real answer was never about how much willpower you had. It was about how little your ancestors ever needed, because the world around them did what your willpower has been struggling to do alone.